Thank you for coming back for another speaking tip this week. This week, I want to talk about something that I have seen creep into the speaking business, a lot of the speech coaching that I wind up getting involved with. This is something that a lot of people are taught, and it's something called the U-I ratio. And I just want to tell you right up front, I don't agree with the U-I ratio. I do agree with what the coaches that are talking about that and teach this are trying to resolve. But I don't think you resolve it by substituting the word I with the word you. Okay, the whole issue that comes up in a lot of speech coaching is that people stand up and they just talk about themselves and they don't engage the audience. And what the coaches are talking about is they're wanting the speaker to engage the audience. So they want to give them you-phrased statements, you-phrased questions. And with that, what they're hoping to do is to bring the audience into the scene with them. Now, the truth is that what they're trying to resolve is the engagement of the audience with the speaker. But just simply switching those two pronouns does not solve the problem. And what's happened is over the last many years, like 12, 14 years, I've received so many speeches that are actually grammatically incorrect and make no sense because people are trying to put you word phrases where they would say I. Now, let me just explain to you what I think kills the speech. And I've talked about this all along. I talk about humility. I talk about sharing, don't tell. Okay, if you're using I and you're using I about, let me tell you how smart I am. Let me tell you about how successful I am. That's an improper use of I. First of all, it's an arrogant, egotistical attitude towards the audience. And I talked earlier about respecting your audience. You don't use I to talk about, let me tell you how smart I am. Let me tell you, like I said, how successful I am, or how I've overcome all these barriers and you haven't. And you don't talk about you in a condescending fashion, is that you're not going to be successful unless you do this. You have more opportunities than you realize and you're not taking advantage of them. That's invalidative towards the audience. However, if you flip it, it actually works really well. If you said, I had more opportunities than I was taking advantage of, and I couldn't figure out how to take advantage of them. You probably don't have that problem. You're probably taking advantage of a lot more things than I am. You build your audience up with you. You talk yourself down. Remember humility. Put your audience on the stage, you be on the ground, you speak up to your audience. You also remember sharing versus telling. When you're sharing, you're being humble, so you're talking about the failures, the struggles that you had, okay? But you phrase that as I was struggling with this. I didn't know how to make this happen. And most of you probably would have figured this out a long time before I did. That works really well on the UI ratio and engaging the audience. You speak up to your audience, speak down to yourself. Put yourself in the position of the one who's struggling and can't figure it out. Talk to the audience like they are. But don't just simply count the U's and I's in your speech and go, gosh, I need to have a 50-50%, so I'm going to change half the I's to U's. A lot of speaking is done in the first person. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like I said, the only thing that's wrong is talking about how great you are and using I to elevate how intelligent you are. But if you said, I had been married 3 times, I had been fired 4 times, I had been arrested, 5 times, and I've been bankrupt 6 times. There's nothing wrong with that. Instead of saying, if you were standing there with me, you would have seen me get married 6 times. You would have seen me get, you would have been with me in bankrupt court 4 times. How do you know I would have been there? And I've heard openings when they're trying to switch the UI. If you were standing on the street corner, you would have felt the bus go by and the breeze blow on the back of my head as this, sleeting rain fell against my face. You would have seen the beautiful blonde standing across the street. How do you know I would have? I might have been talking on my cell phone. See, you don't know that I would have experienced that. But if you give that story in a good first person explanation, I was standing in the street, a bus came by and I felt the snow or sleet hit the back of my head. And I look across the street and here's this gorgeous blonde standing there. I don't know. Has anybody here ever experienced something like that? You probably would have done something different, but this is what I did, right? There's a way to engage that audience by always speaking up to them, putting yourself as the dunce that needs to learn, the stupid person, the failure, and you're learning your way through, which puts you in a sharing mode with the audience. So I just share that with the standpoint that when you're looking at the U's and I's in a speech, there's a lot more complexity to it than just simply counting the U's and I's in a speech and thinking that you can switch them back and forth and that's going to engage your audience. What's going to engage your audience is your passion. I talk a lot about your life force, your life energy, your emotional energy, your commitment to the message, your spiritual energy, your conviction, your passions for it, your purpose for the communication, your desire that the audience get that message. Those are the things that connect you with an audience, not just switching some U's and I's around. It's not that mechanical. We're talking about live, real communication with living human beings, and we have to connect with them on an emotional basis with things that make sense. Okay, so as far as the UI ratio go, you can count them, you can see what it works, but always talk down to yourself, not always, but in general, speak down to yourself and I, and speak up to people in you, and it works really well, and you don't have to count the U's and I's in. All right. That is my message that I have for you.